One of the biggest mistakes that job seekers I find make as it relates to the interview process is really not adequately preparing for the interview process. The first thing that I would say is that every person that's looking for a job should understand that 50% of the decision about a job is and making a decision to join an employer is your decision, and then 50% of the decision is the employer's decision. So to ensure that you're making a decision that's right for you and that you've really thought about if that employer is a good fit or not requires you to do research on companies that are of interest to you. So when you're researching a company, it's important to identify what industry are you interested in working in, if that's a priority. Do your core values align with those that the employer has identified online that you can consider? And so you're really just doing your homework and research to look at their brand and see, what is the right situation for you. So the research on companies is really important. Another thing is preparing for interview questions. So you want to have your own list of questions for the interview, meaningful questions that you've thought about that are important for you to have answers to make good decisions about if this opportunity that you're considering is right for you or not. You also want to be prepared to answer interview questions that an employer, hiring manager, interviewing panel may ask of you. So some of the questions they will likely ask you about is details around your resume. If you have employment gaps on your resume, they're going to cover that. If you have short employment tenures, they're going to ask about that. And I encourage you not to use just the general population interview answers, but think about answers that are honest. And also, if there's something that you learned where it's not the most favorable answer in your favor for the job, employers like to hear the truth and what you learned from that and how you will proceed forward, because that gives them insight into who you are. So make sure that you have good interview questions. Also, don't over-explain or ramble when you're answering questions. Be concise, but not so concise that the hiring manager or the interview panel can't really glean from what you're saying and gain insight about who you are and how you operate. So make sure you don't ramble, but at the same time, simultaneously, you're succinct in your answers, but you also answer questions thoroughly and carefully. You also don't want to speak negatively about your current or past employers, because what that says to a potential employer is that if you'll speak negatively about someone before them, you would speak negatively about them. And so be mindful of that as you move through the interview process and you prepare. So if you did have a bad experience with a past employer, it's important to think about how you're going to shape that conversation so that it doesn't come across as a negative, but as a lesson learned or an opportunity that you gained as a result of that work history and experience. And then ensure again that you're asking meaningful questions at the end, because usually a hiring manager or interview panel will ask you, do you have any additional questions you would like to ask? And so think about those final questions you want to ask, like when are you going to be making your decision on who's the right candidate for you? Is there anything else I can share with you about myself, my career, my experiences, my expertise, my education that would be helpful to know? And then make sure that after the interview, you follow up with a thank you note. It goes a long way. You get 1,000 points for that, because most candidates do not send a thank you note to the person or the persons that interviewed them. So make sure you're polished every step along the way and you're demonstrating excellence in the interview process.
Collaborate with HR Anew to support your success. Scan the QR code to learn more and follow us for valuable insights on HR, the evolving workplace, and what it takes to stay ahead.